So one thing I can say for sure with these next couple of videos is I'm gonna have an excellent time. Welcome to my new series reviewing the Bill and Ted movies. With the upcoming release of Bill and Ted Face the Music, which got pushed up at the last minute from a September release date to an August 28 VOD release, I wanted to do a review of the first two movies, especially because I've actually never seen either of them before. I know they have pretty big followings, they were just two movies I never got around to seeing, other than like a clip here and there. So these reviews are completely based on my first time watching. Let me know what you think of these movies in the comments below, and if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can catch my reviews of both the second and third movie as soon as they're out. But now, let's talk about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. The movie is directed by Stephen Herrick, who also directed a number of films for Disney in the 90s, including The Mighty Ducks, The Three Musketeers, and the remake of 101 Dalmatians. This is his only time directing one of these films, but it's co-written by Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon, who also co-wrote the other two entries in this series. And it stars Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves as Bill and Ted, respectively. They are trying to form their own band, they slack off, and have trouble in school. And if they fail their history class, Ted's father plans on sending him to military school in Alaska. And this now all rests on them passing their final exam, which is an oral presentation. And this part sets the tone for the entire movie. The solution? A man named Rufus, played by George Carlin, is sent back to their time and hands them a time machine so they can bring back historical figures to the present day for their test. Because the future where Rufus is from is molded based on their success as musicians, and if Ted goes to military school, the band never forms and the future's in ruins. And that's pretty wild right there. Like, it's a ridiculous concept. You have these two goofballs who say things like excellent and make little air guitar gestures every 2 seconds, and everyone in the future speaks like this as well, but with a straight face. You have a council known as the three most important people in the world who look very serious and never smile, yet they say things like party on dude, totally deadpan, with cheesy rock music playing in the background. And that's all within the first few minutes. It's a movie that doesn't take itself seriously by any means, and doesn't want you taking it seriously either. And the second you realize that, it becomes a lot of fun. The tone of this made it such a blast. Like, whenever Bill and Ted would make air guitar noises, you'd actually hear an electric guitar in the background. And when the time machine is in use, the effects are so terrible, but so 80s, and it has this wild, energetic soundtrack whenever it appears, whether it be rock music or synth music, and you can't help but laugh from it just showing up. It also includes a wide variety of historical figures, ranging from Abraham Lincoln to Sigmund Freud, Billy the Kid, and most prominently Napoleon. And it would reduce everyone to pretty much caricatures of themselves. Most notably, Napoleon is the first figure brought back to the present, and he's left with Ted's younger brother. So he takes him to a carnival where he gets into competitions and he yells and he screams at everyone, and he's super territorial about everything. You also have Sigmund Freud, whose every other line of dialogue is him asking about another character's parents, and every line of dialogue from Abraham Lincoln almost feels like this big speech. Every basic thing you know about each historical figure, that's their entire personality here. It's pretty simple and straightforward, but because of the tone this movie set, it works. I had plenty of good laughs from them. And even though there are a lot of historical figures, and this is a movie centered around time travel, one thing to keep in mind is that the time travel aspect is and isn't a major part of the movie. Like, yes, the whole point is they go back in time to get these historical figures, but that's only half the movie, really. They don't spend that much time in each setting. Like, they get Napoleon within a few minutes of showing up in his time period. And half the people they bring back with them, they're shown through montages, and it's fine. The second half focuses on them putting this project together and having these historical figures interact with the present day. And while the moments of Bill and Ted in the past are pretty funny, like one of the main scenes is them in the Renaissance era, and they fall in love with two princesses almost instantly, Romeo and Juliet style. But for the purposes of pacing, it works they kept most of the interactions short. It's an hour and a half, and it really didn't need to be any longer. The way it's set up just keeps things constantly moving. A lot of things are solved with almost Deus Ex Machinas. They get out of tricky situations almost as quickly as they get into them, and sometimes it's barely explained, but it's fine. This is a movie that at the very beginning asks you to pretty much suspend your disbelief for nearly everything. So a lot lot of things that wouldn't be okay in a movie that actually took itself seriously are okay here. It also doesn't really have too many rules. I know a big thing with time travel movies is that each have their own set of rules. This kind of goes with the flow though, and doesn't want you to think too much about it. Like, one of the very first uses of the time machine is Bill and Ted, before they start their journey, interacting with versions of themselves after they rounded everyone up. And in any other time travel movie, this goes completely against all time travel logic of meeting yourself, but it ends up working out. They have this fairly lengthy conversation with themselves, the future versions give the past versions advice, and they're laughing at their own jokes, and they're just such ridiculous characters, and the premise itself is already so out there that it's essentially whatever. As for Bill and Ted themselves, they're very enjoyable. It's actually funny seeing Keanu Reeves here. I mean, I've seen him in other comedies, but he's definitely more composed in those movies. Plus, I'm also used to him so much now as the big action star from John Wick and The Matrix, but he plays the goofy slacker role here really well. It almost doesn't feel like I'm watching the same actor, and I guess that speaks for his talents, honestly. And Alex Winter is funny as well. They more or less have the same exact personality. Very laid back, very easygoing. They kind of trade off the leader role between the two. One will totally take charge of a situation in one scene, but then the other will speak on behalf of both of them in the very next scene. They're essentially two peas in a pod, and Reeves and Winter play off each other very well. They're both hilarious. Now, they may not be the brightest protagonists around, like their default expression is almost this blank stare, and they mispronounce people's names like Beethoven instead of Beethoven, or Socrates instead of Socrates. Plus, some of the jokes they make definitely haven't aged well. And there have been other movies since this one that have main characters with a similar style, but those don't always work so well. They fail to capture that same energy. And I think what makes these two in particular work really well is that there's still a distinct personality hidden there. Like, they clearly wing every situation they're in and rarely freak out over everything, but they have like this cheery optimism over even the smallest things, and they always maintain this silly surfer lingo, like the scene where they go to get Billy the Kid, they walk in a bar, ask for beer, and get it with no problem, and they just go, "They didn't even card us, dude," and they're like so amazed by it. The tiniest thing impresses them. Plus, they have their own backwards logic that they use, which will sometimes make zero sense, but it allows them to get from point A to point B with no problem at times. So they clearly try working their way through things, even if it's through the weirdest logic possible, and it's extremely silly, but it makes you enjoy watching them so much, especially since the tone is set so perfectly. George Carlin is also good here. He's actually not in the movie for very long. He shows up mainly at the beginning and then at the end, but still, this was a fun change of pace for him. His bitter, sarcastic stand-up comedy persona is usually what carries over in most of his film roles, but this is a little different. He says everything with a straight face, but because he's from a future molded by Bill and Ted's personalities, he speaks the exact same lingo as them, and again, it's ridiculous. It wasn't anything too bold, but it was pretty funny, and I had a good time seeing him on screen with the main characters. This is a pretty simple, straightforward movie, but it's still a lot of fun. It's not asking you to take it seriously and pretty much wants you to just go with the flow and have a good time, and that's perfectly okay. It's silly, goofy, has plenty of laughs, and has some very likable performances from Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter. I had a lot of fun with this, and if you haven't seen it by now, check it out. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure gets an 8 out of 10. Next up, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. I'll have that one out later this week, followed by Bill and Ted Face the Music next weekend. Stay tuned for those and more 2020 reviews coming soon. So let me know, did you see Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did you find it funny? Does it hold up for you? And what's one of your favorite time travel movies? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll catch you next time.